August 14th edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Follow me on Twitter, guys, at Adam Martin, right there at the bottom of the screen. Check us out at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Go to our YouTube channel, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it, guys. Also, check me out at bjpen.com and MMARings.net. So, pretty good show today for you guys. We'll be talking about the Contender series from last night, a couple pieces of news, and then a bunch of fight announcements. There were a lot of fights announced yesterday that I'm going to get to today, so I'm looking forward to talking about those. But first and foremost, let's talk about Dana White's Contender series. So, it took place last night, as always, at the UFC Apex. And another good card, and another card that features a couple upsets, a couple that I did predict yesterday on the podcast, and a couple that I got wrong as well. So pretty crazy card. I mean, I've talked about this all over the summer, but these fights are very tough to predict. There are always upsets on these cards that no one sees coming, and it just shows that, when you got fighters that don't have a ton of tape and that there's not much information on, it's kind of taking a crapshoot sometimes. So you saw a couple upsets last night. Once again, let's just start with the card. I'll go from the top and work my way down. In the main event of the evening, one of the upsets I did predict correctly, William Knight defeats Herdem Alek via third-round TKO. Man, what a great performance by this guy. Like, he was getting dominated early in the fight. It looked like he was going to get submitted. Managed to make his way out of the rear naked choke attempt, and then 434 round 3 finished this guy with grounded pounds. So just a tremendous third-round win here by William Knight. And Dana White did sign him to a contract, but it was a developmental deal in the same vein as Greg Hardy and Devon Lewis. I personally would have just given him a contract. Here's the thing what Dana White said. So first off, this guy's 31, so he's not young, but he's not old either. He's kind of in that middle tier. But here's the thing Dana said that I don't agree with. He said, he's only been training for 50 months. That's not true. Yes, as a pro, he's only been fighting for 15 months, less than that. But look at his amateur record. He's been fighting amateur fights since 2016. And I think a lot of people missed over that. And like I said yesterday in the show, he did have that win over Jorgen De Castro, who just got signed to the UFC. So if De Castro is ready for the UFC, why is this guy not? Personally, I would have just signed him to a deal. It feels like Dana was given some wrong information there. It is what it is. Either way, he gets a developmental deal. I'm looking forward to seeing William Knight in the UFC one day. Should be pretty soon. I think maybe you give him a fight in LFA or something, but man, this guy's got good cardio for a dude with that much muscle. So, wow, what a great third round finish by him. William Knight gets signed to a UFC developmental deal. Next up, another upside did correctly. Brock Weaver defeats Devin Smith via unanimous decision. Really close fight here, but Weaver gets the win over Smith, and he closes a plus 140 dog. And I should mention Knight was 145, plus 145. So Weaver gets the job done. He wins the decision, and Dana doesn't always sign guys off decision wins, but in this case, it was a pretty good fight. And he said that this guy, he would have made a mistake if he passed on this guy. So good for him. Brock Weaver gets a shot in the UFC. He's actually on a 8-fight win streak right now. 7-fight win streak. A lot of those wins are by decision, which does concern me a little bit, because when you get to this high level of the sport, decision wins, especially split decision wins over guys like Charles Bennett, those aren't good. But at the same time, he is getting his hand raised. So we'll see what happens when he gets to the UFC. I don't see as much of a high ceiling for this guy as I do for Knight. I think Knight can go really far in the sport, 205, but I think Weaver can definitely win a couple of fights at 170 in the lower rankings. So would I have signed him? I'm not sure. He did get the job done. Good for him, but he didn't get a finish either. So I think this guy could have been in the bubble, but Dana White seems to like him and end up signing him. Next up, here's another upset. I did not predict this one. I thought Shayna Young would win, but Sarah Alper gets the second round rear naked choke. Shayna Young was controlling the fight in the first round, and then Alper was eventually able to get her back and choke her out in the second round. Great win here by Alper. Gets assigned to the UFC. So good for Sarah Alper. She got signed by Dana White, and obviously looks like a good signing. I mean, that was a great finish. They always need she's a flyweight, because she's going to be a flyweight. She's a bantamweight now, but she will be a flyweight according to Dana White. So always looking for new flyweights. She's on a 3-fight win streak right now. She has some good experience in the sports. I'm looking forward to seeing her fight in the UFC. Next up, this was a favorite than one. So Tony Gravely wins. He was a minus 320 favorite, biggest favorite in the card. I thought Ray Rodriguez would have a better chance than this, but you know what? Gravely looked great in this fight, man. Really controlled the fight in the mat and gets the third round finish, by ground and pound. Great finisher by Tony Gravely, and another guy that got signed. And opening up the card, one of the other favorites that didn't win the fight, Julius Anglican, defeats Carl Reed via third round submission, rear naked choke, but Dana White didn't sign him. So that one surprised me a little bit. He thinks he's not ready. He thought he should have finished the guy earlier. But at the same time, I mean, he's won 6 straight fights all by stoppage. He's won all 7 of his pro fights by stoppage. I don't know. I feel like this could have been a mistake by Dana White. We'll see. I mean, I don't personally see a huge ceiling for this guy or anything like that. But at the same time, he did get a finish. He's on a nice win streak, and he's only 28 years old. So I think they could have taken Nicholas, but at the same time, I don't think it's the worst pass Dana's made. It's just kind of strange that they did finally pass on the guy that did get a submission or a knockout, because they almost always take guys that win by stoppage, and in this case, they did pass on Nicholas. So it's too bad, but it is what it is. Okay, a few pieces of news before I get into the fight announcements. Dana White was asked after the event about the just crazy idea of a fight between Henry Cejudo and Valentina Shevchenko, which, by the way, odds are actually out for that fight. Crazy enough. I mean, it's not going to happen, but Cejudo is a minus 1,100 favorite, and Shevchenko is a plus 650 dog, just in case anyone was wondering. But Dana White was asked about the fight, and he just basically laughed at the idea and said it's not going to happen. And obviously, it's not going to happen. UFC will not break gender etiquette. They won't do a male versus female fight. I don't think that would ever happen. I mean, geez, it would be an interesting fight. Shevchenko's amazing. Cejudo's great. If that fight took place at 125, I mean, it'd be a fun fight, but obviously it's not going to happen. Of course, I would pick Cejudo in that fight. I mean, the guys, it's just the wrestling alone. I mean, I'm not going to compare male and female fighters because there's no point, but Shevchenko's amazing in her own right. It's just that Cejudo is, the guy's an Olympic caliber wrestler. I mean, he would win that fight, but it won't happen. It's just something to talk about, and it's something that the sports books are putting out there so they get people clicking and checking out their websites. One other piece of news here that I want to mention here, Darren Till was interviewed, and he says he wants to fight Robbie Lawler next, which I think is a great fight personally. You guys know I'm not a huge Darren Till fan. I think he's a bit overrated, of course, and in my opinion, he's on a 3-fight losing streak right now. But the fight with Robbie Lawler doesn't make sense because Robbie's also on a losing streak, and Robbie's kind of at the tail end of his career, whereas Darren, he's still relatively young. So I think this fight makes a lot of sense. It's a good call by Darren Till. I thought he was going to fight at middleweight. I mean, maybe this fight could take place at middleweight, although I guess Robbie would stay at welterweight. Either way, I do think there's a good chance this fight happens because Dana White really likes Darren Till. He likes Robbie Lawler. I think they would put this fight together. And it makes sense to be I don't even know if it's a main event, but I guess it could be a main event in England. If not, you could put it on a main card on a pay-per-view probably, or an ESPN card. All right, a couple of fight announcements here. There was actually a few fight announcements that are really good. First up, I like this fight a lot. Alistair Overeem will be taking on Walt Harris in the main event of UFC Washington, D.C. That's on, I believe, December 7th in Washington, D.C. I mean, wow, what a fight this is, right? Alistair Overeem coming off of a knockout win over Alexei Oleinik, also defeated Sergey Havlich before that. We know Overeem, I mean, one of the best strikers, one of the best submission guys at heavyweight, 39 years old. He is one of the best fighters in heavyweight history, and I think he'll be a Hall of Famer one day if I had to guess. But takes on Walt Harris here, who also is coming off a win over Alexei Oleinik. Walt Harris has looked great lately. He's on a 4-fight unbeaten streak, last 2 wins by knockout. Guys look great. This is an interesting fight. I mean, Overeem obviously has more experience. He's fought better competition. He's looked really good lately, but Walt Harris has a ton of knockout power and has looked absolutely incredible. I personally feel like Walt Harris will be favored in this fight because I think people are going to fade over him. He was, I think, a very small favorite in his last fight. In the Pavlich fight, I think he was the underdog. So I feel like people are down and over him right now, and understandably so. I mean, he's been knocked out 13 times in MMA alone, plus kickboxing. So he's been KO'd a lot, but, Walt Harris, I think, will be favored. I just think it's a close fight. It can go either way. It's heavyweight, and Overeem has a lot of experience. Also on that card, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday with Cole Shelton on the preview podcast, Ben Rothwell will be taking on Stefan Struve. So Ben Rothwell, he's actually on a 3-fight losing streak, but he's fought some tough guys in Junior Dos Santos, Blagoy Ivanov, and Andrei Arlovsky. In the last 2 fights against Arlovsky and Ivanov were very, very close fights. He takes on Stefan Struve here. Stefan Struve coming off a submission win over Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Before that, had lost 3 straight fights. And he said he was retiring after the de Lima fight, but somehow was convinced to come back. He thinks he's still got some gas left in the tank. I personally don't see that, but we'll see what happens. I think he's going to lose this fight. I think Ben Rothwell probably knocks out Stefan Struve. Next up, UFC 241, another late switch up. So I feel bad for Devonte Smith. He got another opponent here. He's fighting this guy, Khama Worthy. And I might as well just talk about the odds because they're out. Devonte Smith opened at minus 750. Worthy opened at plus 450. So those odds came out this morning. Smith should win this fight. I don't know much about Worthy, but Devonte Smith obviously was a big favorite over Clay Collard as well. The guy's got a lot of KO power. It's unfortunate that this happened, I guess, late last night because me and Cole did the podcast yesterday breaking it down, but it is what it is. Either way, we would have picked we would have picked Smith. He's actually, this guy Worthy's on a 5-fight win streak, but he really hasn't fought a great level of competition. He did fight Kyle Nelson who's the current UFC fighter, I believe in Canada. Let me double check on that. Yes, in Toronto. Yeah, that was like 2 years ago. So I'm kind of familiar with this guy. He also fought Paul Felder. So he's fought a couple guys that are noteworthy, but yeah, he's on a 5-fight win streak over guys that I don't really know too much about. So we'll see what happens here, but I'm pretty sure that Devonte Smith will win. UFC Tampa gets another fight. This is a really good one too. Max Griffin against Alex Morono. I like this fight a lot. Max Griffin, he's on a 1-fight win streak. Defeated Zalim Amadia via majority decision in his last fight, but let's be honest, he shouldn't be on a 2-fight win streak because the Thiago Alves fight was absolute robbery. Takes on Alex Morono here, who's on a 2-fight win streak himself. Alex Morono defeated Zach Otto and Kenan Song in his last 2 fights. Another close fight. I got to think about this one a little bit more because I think it's very competitive. Max Griffin, I think, is a really good fighter, but Morono's looked amazing lately, so I think the odds will be close here. But I guess I kind of lean towards Morono here based on the win streak. I got to think about that fight a little bit more. It is a good fight, and that's at UFC Tampa in October. Also in October at UFC Boston, Randy Costa takes on Boston Salmon. Of course, Boston Salmon is fighting in Boston, right? So Randy Costa, he has 1 fight in the UFC. He lost to Brandon Davis by submission. Before that, he won all 4 of his fights by knockout. He's only been fighting since last June. He's already in the UFC. So the good for this guy. He really made it to the UFC quickly and takes on Boston Salmon here again in Boston. Boston Salmon. He's coming off a knockout loss to, what's this guy's name? Khalid Taha. He did win his fight on the Contender Series, but he's actually lost 2 of his last 3 fights. Everyone was saying this guy's a good prospect, but then he lost to a guy like Taha by first round knockout, 25 seconds. That was a really bad loss. Not sure how good this guy actually is, but we'll see what happens in this fight. I mean, 2 guys that really need to prove themselves, 2 prospects on the rise, but 2 guys that are coming off losses. So we'll see what happens here. But I expect Salmon to be favored again, like he was last time. I don't know if I trust this guy. And one other fight announcement, I'm very surprised this guy's coming back. Antonio Rogerio Nogueira will be taking on Trevor Hotdog Smith in UFC Sao Paulo in November. And again, Nogueira's another guy a lot of people thought retired after his last fight. He's 43 years old now. He just got knocked out by Ryan Spann at UFC 237 in Brazil. I was there for that fight. Brutal knockout. He's lost 2 of his last 3 fights by knockout. He did beat Sam Alvey last September, so that was a good win for Little Nog, but man, he's old, and he's been fighting for a long time, since 2001. And he takes on Trevor Smith here. Trevor Smith has been extremely inconsistent in the UFC. He's 38 years old now. He's 59 in his career, and in the UFC, he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 in the UFC overall. So he hasn't won a fight since 2017 against Chris Camozzi. I just think Trevor Smith's – I'm surprised he's made this long in the UFC. I thought when he came over from Strikeforce, he'd be cut after like 1 or 2 fights. Somehow he's managed to keep a pretty good career in the UFC, but at 38 years old and moving up a weight class to light heavyweight to take on Little Nog in Brazil, I don't see that ending well for Trevor Smith. I think this is the UFC doing Little Nog a solid and giving him a very winnable fight to possibly retire at. So the Ryan Spann fight was not a good fight for Little Nog, but I think that Trevor Smith is a guy that he can definitely knock out. So I would actually pick Little Nog by knockout here because I think he'll be the bigger fighter, more used to fighting at 205, and of course fighting in front of his hometown. I shouldn't say hometown, but home country of Brazil here. That should help him out a lot. Looking forward to seeing Little Nog hopefully fight for the last time because I personally think he should have retired a little while ago, but he obviously didn't want to go in that brutal loss to Ryan Spann. I can't blame him for that. So overall, some really good fight announcements, and I'm just going to double check to see if I missed anything else that I wanted to mention here, but I think for now that's good. Let's just take a look here. I guess quickly Mark Diakese is taking on Landon Venado. I don't think I talked about this fight, so I got to mention this one quickly here. This actually came out, I think, 2 days ago. I just missed it. So Landon Venado is coming back to take on Mark Diakese, the Bone Crusher. Venado, he's actually on a 2-fight unbeaten streak. One was a draw against Favola, and then he beat Marcos Rosa Mariano by submission in his last fight. So he's only 2-3 and 2 in the UFC. It's a very weird record, but the guy's always in exciting fights. Takes on Mark Diakese here. Mark Diakese, he is 4-3 in the UFC. He's coming off a win over Joseph Duffy, a very good win. So he's looked good lately, but I think Venado probably has this one. It's going to be a close fight, though. Very exciting, and that takes place at UFC Copenhagen. So that's one fight I did miss, and I want to get to quickly. And the California State Athletic Commission, I should mention this as well, has suspended Aspen Ladd's license to fight 135, and I don't blame them. That was man, that was bad in the last one, the weight cut, and then she got knocked out quickly. So I think the weight cut definitely had something to do with that. Very unfortunate, but we'll see what happens there, because I think she is going to work at the PI, and maybe eventually she'll be able to fight at 135 again in California. But for now, she'll be fighting in another place. She has a fight coming up against Yana Kunitskawa. So that's all I want to talk about today, guys. I did the show yesterday with Cole Shelton breaking down UFC 241, so please go and check that out. Also, guys, of course, check me out on MMA Adam Martin, right there at the bottom of the screen, MMAOddsbreaker.com, BJPen.com, MMARatings.net. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow breaking down the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Until then, have a great day, guys. I hope you have an awesome one, and I'll see you soon.